Hi class, this is Eric Blackham from your CIT 230 class. I'll be teaching you a little bit about CSS measurement units. So let's get started. First things first, measuring is essential. We all know how important measuring is, but in web development it's even more vital that you not only know that measuring is important, but understand the measurement units. For an example, I love to bake bread, especially banana bread. Can you imagine if you tried to bake banana bread but didn't understand, not only just how to measure, but the measurement units? For example, a basic banana bread recipe calls for, 1.5 cups of flour, so many teaspoons of baking soda, so many teaspoons of salt, so many cups of sugar, and blah, blah, blah. If I didn't understand those units though, and I just saw 1 sugar, 1.5 flour, half teaspoon, half vanilla, I'd be completely lost. So the same is true with building a website. If you don't know the units that you need to measure, you're not going to be able to create the visual, aesthetically pleasing, design that you're looking for. So without that understanding, it's bad news bears. All right, knowing what measurement units to use and where will help the design you have in your head actually appear on the web. It's key. So diving into the measurement units themselves, they boil down to 2 categories. The first is absolute, and we also have relative. With absolutes, these types of measurement units don't really change. They're always going to be the same because they relate to measurements outside of the web. For example, a pixel or a centimeter. A pixel is, in reference to the size of, basically the size of a dot on the screen. A centimeter, we all are familiar with that. It's, a set width. And that will always be the same no matter where you are in the world, no matter what size your screen is, a centimeter will always be a centimeter. With relative, it's the opposite of absolute. The unit size can vary or change depending on how big your screen is and resolution and things like that. It's typically relative to a base defined element, so there has to be, relative to some absolute, usually a pixel. Examples of this are the EM, the REM, and percentage. So more on absolute measurements. We use these, not very commonly because they're not desired for multi-device web viewing. Going back to our centimeter example, if you are creating a web page and you are on a 26 centimeter screen and you make it all look good and it's all in centimeters, when somebody pulls it up on a cell phone with a smaller screen size, it's going to appear exactly how it would have on a 16 centimeter screen. So on the phone you'd have to be scrolling to try to find, and it'd be a mess. So it's not desired for multi-device web viewing. It's not really friendly that way. Usually you'll use this only when you know what type of viewer or output is going to be on the other side and that your measurement unit is applicable to that. So a good example of that would be when you need to print. You know that most printers have an 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper that you'll be printing on, and you can design what you want to and print exactly according to the size of the printer paper, because that's not going to change. And so on to our next point. The pixel is the main exception to the rule of being not very commonly used absolute measurements, mostly because it is used as a point of reference for relative measurement. And so next, the description and the units that we have over here, these are the most commonly used absolute measurements of the ones that are used. So centimeters, millimeters, inches, pixels, points and picas. Obviously, the pixel is the most common. So with relative measurements, we use these when you want to make a display that is multi-device friendly for creating responsive layouts. So for displays that are relative to the size of the font or the screen, you'll want to use these types of measurement units. So on the right over here, let's focus on these descriptions real quick. You can see the EM is a unit that is relative to the font size of the parent element. So this is actually right and wrong. It's font size of the element, but more importantly, it's the font size of the parent element. So if you have a paragraph, and then inside the paragraph you have a link, the link you would use as a EM relative to the font size of the paragraph. And you can read here, the EX is relative to the X height of the current font, CH relative to the width of the zero, REM relative to the font size of the root element. These two are similar. In just a moment, we'll talk about how they're different. These V units over here, that the V refers to viewport. We talked about that in a previous lesson where we set for our website that we have published now. We set the viewport so that it can be scalable to the size of the browser that we're using. So that's how that is important. So let's talk about this EM and REM real quick. Those are the ones that really I needed more help on. So hopefully I can shed some light for you guys. Here we have basically two examples of one an EM and two an REM. They are extremely similar measurements of unit in that they both refer to an ancestral element for their unit of measurement. The EM is dependent on the parent element. So here we have a div that we set the font size to 16 pixels. That is the base amount or the base size for its child. So his child, we made both the paragraph and the article. The paragraph we made 75% or 0.75 EM of the 16 pixels. This article we made, let's make that more official. Font size 1 EM. Okay, there we go. It's official. So 1 EM is 100% 16 pixels. So this article will have a font size of 16 pixels. But we set the paragraph to 0.75 EM, which is in direct reference to this article. So the article is 16 pixels because it's referenced to the div, and so these two paragraphs are the same size. This link over here, however, we set to 0.75 EM. At first, I thought that this was the same size as the paragraph, but this actually, because it's nested inside of the paragraph, the 0.75 EM is referencing this 0.75 EM. So the link will have a font size of 0.75 EM of this 0.75 EM, which is 0.75 of 16 pixels. So EM, it can be helpful, but when you are going to use a lot of nested elements, it is going to be very complicated and can get hard. The REM kind of helps fix that problem of confusing, the point size the font size getting smaller and smaller as it keeps referencing the parent element, because with the root we can set the font size to 16px, and with this we made this paragraph 0.75 REM. When we do REM, it is always in reference to the root element, which in this example is the div, which is 16 pixels. So in this link, if we were to style it as the font size of 0.75 REM, because we are referencing the root EM, which is 16 pixels, it makes it a lot easier for us to just, boom, it's always going to be 16 pixels that we're referencing, so 75% of that. So with our homework that we did when we created our website and we styled it, we used REM. So just to show you a little bit more about how that works, our body in our index.html is the root element. We set the font size to 16 pixels, and every time we use the unit REM, it's, for example, in the header, the font size is 1.5 times the normal, or the root 16 pixels. Our second header, H2, is obviously going to be smaller than H1, so I set mine to 1.1 REM. The margin and the padding, we use the 16 pixel as our reference as well. It shows you, it's not just for font size, it can be used for anything. The width, so this 25% is reference to the containing element of this header image. If we were to set that to 50%, the picture would take up half of the header. But we set it to 25%, the height auto adjusts to that, so that's how it appears just right on our website. But I hope that helps, clarify a little bit more even about the REM and percentages and how relative units are really relative to a base that you set. In this example, it was 16 pixels. For more information on these the units, you can go to these websites. This is where I got all of my information, understanding and using REM units. Obviously, pause if you want to and type in the links to those websites. W3 Schools has, awesome, those charts and everything that I got was from here. And SitePoint goes in depth even to more than the commonly used units than that I talked about today. So hope that helps give you a basic understanding of units, what ones are appropriate for creating the display that you want to. Well, you guys have a great week and hope you enjoyed. Thanks.